All right, can you hear me okay? Good evening and welcome to the 2024 Fernie Provincial Election All Candidates Forum. My name is Wendy McDougall. I am the Executive Director of the Fernie Chamber of Commerce. This evening provides a valuable opportunity for our community to engage with the candidates, hear their perspectives on key issues, and ask questions that will shape the future of the local economy. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Free Press, for promoting tonight's event, and a special thank you to the Park Place Lodge for hosting us here tonight. Over the past few weeks, we've gathered feedback from our members through a survey. I'd like to share some key insights from that survey. So 46% of respondents described the current state of the local economy as stable, while the economic outlook for their businesses over the next 6 months was largely neutral. The top challenges facing businesses in Fernie include high operating costs, workforce housing, and labor shortages. The survey also highlighted the most pressing issues our members want the provincial government to address, which include healthcare improvements, affordable housing for workers, and infrastructure development. These findings reflect the critical challenges that Fernie businesses are facing. Tonight, we hope to hear thoughtful responses from the candidates on how they plan to address these issues and support Fernie's long-term prosperity. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Martin Brock, a dedicated supporter of the Chamber, community volunteer, and passionate advocate in Fernie.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. We'd like to start tonight by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Kootenay people. We're both grateful and honored to be able to live, work, and recreate on these lands. A summary of what's going to go down tonight. We're going to start the forum off by inviting the candidates to make opening statements for 3 minutes. The order has been selected at random draw, which we already have done. Then we're going to move to the first question period. These questions that were submitted through the Chamber's survey, which many of you filled out, and were vetted by Chamber staff for relevance and suitability. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, and the order of the responses will be rotated to ensure each candidate has a chance to answer first on the appropriate topics. At about 8:10, we will ask questions to the candidates that were submitted tonight. There is a box at the back where you came in on the corner. Feel free to go back there and write a question down until about 7:45. At that time, we're going to gather those questions and again vet them for relevance and suitability for tonight. All submissions that you submit questions will remain anonymous. And finally, at the end, we'll each candidate to come up and do closing remarks in the reverse order of their opening remarks. A few housekeeping notes. Washrooms, if you need, are just outside the door you came in, to the right in front of the desk, and to the right again to where the washrooms are. Exits are there, and we'll be there if you need to go in a hurry. Muster point, if we need to, is just out the doors to our left, my left, your right, in front of the beer and wine store. We can muster there. If you need water or would like water, there's a water station just in the next room beside us. A few basic notes for tonight. This is an all candidates forum. It is not a debate. There will be no open mic questions. The questions that we're asking tonight will all be previously submitted and submitted here tonight. The timing will be strictly enforced. We have the lovely Jessica here, which will be giving the candidates a 1 minute, 30-second, 15-second, and full stop warning. And we ask the candidates to stick to that. Timing is the only way that we can kind of keep and get as many questions through as we can. Please avoid cheering, speaking out, applause. All of those things take time and distract from what we're trying to do. Whether you agree or disagree with comments that are made tonight, make your vote your voice. That's the best way to do it. Please make sure your cell phones are muted if you could. And we are attempting to use the owl up front here to record tonight. We will post that on the chamber website once the evening is done and the girls get a chance to put that up. So, candidates, you will have 3 minutes for your opening remarks. Please take the time to tell the audience why they should vote for you and anything you want them to know about you or your platform. We're starting, and I'm going to use first names tonight, if that's okay with everybody. We're going to start with Kerri.
Good evening, everybody. Kisa quiet. Welcome here to Kootenay-Rockies, Ravensland. I'm really thrilled for our 4th forum here to be in my hometown with all of you. It's great to have you out here for a better democracy. There is a chance, believe it or not, for the BC Greens in this riding, in this election. This is a chance for a better democracy with more accountability in government. Since 2001, this riding has been held by the right-wing party in the province, and voters have been telling me that they would prefer to have someone who was able to represent a broader swath of the electorate. The Green Party is that choice for more and more people because of our commitments to fiscal responsibility, conservation of wildlife and our environment, and support for social programs. Just last week, I had an NDP supporter come up to me and say, "I'm not excited about the NDP in this election." I asked her why not, and she said, "They have broken their promises over and over again and broken my heart." On the other hand, I've got a man working on my campaign team who was a conservative voter for decades. He's in his 70s now. He's working for me. And in his 50s, he decided, I want my votes to be based on evidence. I want to vote for the party that makes the most rational sense, that's best for everybody. So there's people from all over the spectrum looking at the BC Greens, and because of this close race in this riding this time, and my strong candidacy, every vote's going to count, and you're all needed to make this decision. A moment ago, I made a remark about a better democracy and taking climate change seriously, because those are the key issues that set me apart from the other candidates here. I want to tell you a little bit about myself as well. When I'm not campaigning to become your next MLA, I work for Interior Health, doing healthy public policy work with local governments around the region. I have a son who will be 28 next month. I have lived here for 16 years. I've been in BC for 30 years. I have a master's degree and specialized certificates in negotiation and third-party mediation. You've got 4 of us to choose from on your ballot, and I think you should choose the strongest candidate with the most pressing argument. Climate change is on our doorstep. BC government budgets are out of control, and you need somebody who you can come to with your provincial problems, who you trust will look after them, take you seriously, and work very hard on your behalf. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pete Davis, and I am your Conservative candidate for Kootenay-Rockies. Just want to tell you guys a little bit about myself and why I'm running in this election. I was born in Revelstoke, BC, moved to Cranbrook when I was just 8 months old. My mom made the brave decision to leave, a difficult decision with my dad. He had some difficulties with addictions. So she packed my brother and I up and moved us to Cranbrook. We lived in her friend's basement for a while until we were able to find some housing and community housing in Cranbrook. I can tell you guys, going through welfare has really given me firsthand experience of the challenges that many people are facing today. It's troubling to see how many families are now at their breaking point, struggling to pay bills, buy food, and keep a roof over their heads. Everyone deserves the three basic things: food, shelter, and energy. And I'm finding right now people are finding it's impossible to afford all of these things. I graduated from Mount Baker Secondary in 2000. 2002, I married my wife, Heather, and we have 4 incredible kids. Yes, we have 4. It's expensive, but you know what? It's amazing. Wouldn't change it for the world. Bought our first house in Cranbrook in 2004 for $105,000. Isn't that crazy? Couldn't do that nowadays. I feel sorry for my 4 kids. Started my first business called Davis Financial Group, focusing on commercial finance, and built our first house at the age of 26. Like I said, growing up on welfare has really motivated me to work hard for my kids to make sure that they would never be in that type of situation. I've accomplished so much, but I think there's so much that I can do for this community. For the past 7 years, I've been involved with federal politics with the Conservative Party of Canada. As president in the last election, and at this last election, I was the president, sitting MP. So why did I get into politics? Well, it's simple. When you see how different government policies can impact your life and your family, it becomes impossible to ignore. I've always felt called to serve my community, and once actually wanted to be an RCMP officer, but that didn't work out. And so my desire to make a difference has only grown since then. Watching our province spiral deeper into debt while the quality of life declines for so many has been disheartening. We face crises on multiple levels: rising costs of living, high taxes, deteriorating healthcare, homelessness, opioids, and the struggles with our natural resource sector. There's so many, you guys. We need a new approach, and we need fresh policies. Friends, it's time for something new. It's time for the BC Conservative Party to take the reins in British Columbia. Together, we can build a better future for our families where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. It's time for change. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming out. My name is Sam, and I am running for MLA with the BC. I'm a resident of Cranbrook who's lived in Sparwood for 6 years before that. I've been a Sparwood councillor for the last 2 years as well. And I've seen that some of the experiences, that some of the big problems we're looking at need to be solved in Victoria. We ended up moving to Cranbrook because of my daughter's diagnosis with juvenile arthritis. We found the services we needed were only in Cranbrook. Going back for so much, it made sense for us to make that move. Difficult decision to happen, and here we are. We want to help other families not have to make those difficult decisions based on moving for need and medical need, so they can stay home and be home more often. This is something I want to fight for every single day. We're hoping to save heartache for another family that we had to go through. I come from a family of hard workers. My dad raised us. I was born and raised in Thompson, Manitoba, so we worked in mining out there. My father-in-law worked in forestry and mining out here as well. Just up front, you want to say hi. He was raised in Fernie. My mother-in-law was worked here for the city of Fernie, retired after 18 years of dedicated service. My brother-in-law worked here as well. They worked in the mines and now work up north. My wife was born in Fernie and raised between Fernie and Sparwood. She's been part of the education system for most of her career and was a principal at both of the schools at one point in Sparwood. This is a big reason why I want to create stronger communities for our youth. We know what the needs are, and we really want to keep that going. We've seen strong investment in the communities. I talked to a lot of folks about what their needs are. I take that time to make sure we're looking at that. And that's a big thing. I've worked in Elkford. I lived in Sparwood. Families from Fernie. My in-laws live in South Country full time, and now we live in Cranbrook. There's not a community in this riding that I don't have a personal connection to and that I'm not willing to have those conversations with folks. And you know what? Representation matters. And I think that's a big lack. We want to make sure that everybody has their voice heard and make those connections. And I want to be the representation, and I'll continue doing that as your MLA. With some of those conversations on needs, we're looking at helping families by hiring and training more doctors. We've seen where progress has going, and we need to continue with that. We've hired 800 doctors in the last few years alone, and we're seeing wait lists drop off. These are things we want to continue working on. We're tackling housing costs and building one of the strongest economies in Canada. And we're starting to see good results. And that's why I'm part of this team. We believe in BC's potential, and we're laser focused on making life better. There's more that I want to do, and I'm the best person suited to be your MLA. My professional background, I got 15 seconds, I'm gonna make it quick. Worked up at the mines, worked up north. Yeah, I'm running out of time, but I appreciate your time. Thank you everybody for coming out. I think it's gonna be a great night. Thank you. Good luck.
Family. Shypitka, welcome everybody. I'm truly honored to be speaking here today on the traditional territory of the Kootenay First Nation here in the heart of Kootenay-Rockies, Fernie. I have deep personal connections to Fernie. My father's birth certificate actually says West Fernie on it. My youngest brother was called Fernie his home, and I was once a proud member of the Fernie Curling Club. Fernie has a history of resilience from the devastating fires of the early 20th century to more recent challenges. As your MLA since 2017, I'm intimately aware of the challenges such as the atmospheric river that happened here in 2021, as well as the devastating ammonia leak that tragically took the lives of 3 people. Fernie has always come together, and I admire the sense of resilience and unity. This spirit of unity is something I want to continue to take forward as your MLA. In this election, we are seeing the emergence of a 2-party system in our province, which is pushing us toward greater polarization and division. But with an independent candidate, we have the chance to restore balance, a middle ground with a proven MLA who has always put this riding first. Most people want change, but it doesn't have to come with extremes. As your 2-term MLA running as an independent, I offer a safe, moderate alternative for those unsure of their choice. Over the past 8 years, I've built strong relationships with user groups, stakeholders, First Nation communities, industry leaders, and everyday folks like you. This experience is invaluable when you're making your decision. Independents have the same resources, the same access, and the same reach as any other MLA. What we don't have is a party leader telling us what to do or pushing policies that are focused on the Lower Mainland. I answer only to one leader. That leader is you, and that's the Rockies. My focus is right here on the needs of our community. The policies I support are born from years of listening, consulting, respecting the knowledge and experience of the people of the Elk Valley. Tonight is a job interview, and you want to hire the best person for the job. My experiences so far have taught me that being an MLA is not an entry-level position. I've had lots of experience before being an MLA, Cranbrook City Councillor, RDUK Director, Health Board Director, numerous committees, including doctor recruitment, public safety, homelessness and wellness, and community tax role. My current appointments include the Shadow Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Finance and Government Services Committee and the Legislative Assembly Management Committee as well. With these experiences, I know how Victoria works. As your independent MLA, you will be guaranteed I will hit the ground running on October 20th. Thanks so much for being here, and I look forward to listening to your questions tonight.
Thank you, everybody. Great. We'll now begin with the first question period. And again, the questions are submitted by the public via the chamber survey, and the order of responses will be rotating. Gets a chance to answer first. The first question is going to be in the order that we just opened. Question to the candidates: what specific policies or actions would you like to see from the next provincial government to support the sustainable economic growth of the local business community? Kerri, we invite you up first.
The chamber and businesses locally have been very clear about what they need for sustainable economic growth. I've been in touch with the chamber for a few years with my work with Interior Health, Healthy Communities, and working on the Fernie Housing Solutions Working Group, because housing was named as the #1 concern, workforce housing, as we heard earlier that Wendy shared. So workforce housing and the accompanying supports is what's really needed to help the business community in this city. Childcare is huge. Access to healthcare, good education, and housing. If folks do not have these basic supports and can't have these same basic supports for their employees, business is going nowhere. I realize that employment prices are going up with the many minimum wage raises we've had, which has been to address cost of living. And although that's good for the workers, it's harder and harder for employers. The BC Greens would like to see the government pay completely for MSP premiums so that employers no longer have to basically subsidize the healthcare of their employees. And we would also like to see $10 a day childcare universally across the province, which would help employers, employees, and virtually every parent. It's also important that we address the sick time thing. Employers now are legislated to give 5 days of sick time to each of their employees, but again, that's a community economic expense that local businesses must cover. The BC Greens would like to see that also taken in-house. Healthcare is a government expense and should be handled by government. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, small businesses are struggling right now. It's tough to do business. The first thing that we would do as a Conservative Party BC is we cut the carbon tax. It's a huge expense on everybody, and it just makes businesses have to up their prices. It costs money for fuel. It pretty much just trickles down the whole way. Unfortunately, the current government that we have right now wants to keep raising that carbon tax. I mean, they're at 80 cents a ton or $80 a ton right now. They want to go to 170. So that's just going to cost us more money. I was talking to a guy the other day that owns a trucking company, and he says it costs them $4,000 a month more just per truck, just because of the carbon tax. The government that we have right now as well, they need to stop controlling everything that we do. They need to allow the small business owners to actually run their business the way that they see, the way that they intended when they first envisioned it. We're going to cut the small business tax to 1%. We're also promising to reduce regulations by 25% in our first year. And what that means is we're actually going to hire a minister that is responsible for red tape reductions. And that person is going to be appointed just to go through and see what other type of redundant regulations are being put on these small business owners, so we can get that stuff back out and they can actually start getting back to work. We also need to review the WorkSafe BC. There's a $2.1 billion surplus sitting there. I don't know why it's sitting there. That needs to go back to the employers that have paid that. I don't know why they since they can just keep that. And we need to start supporting small business again. To start letting them do their jobs. We need to get out of the way. We need to get the red tape gone and allow them to flourish. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I'm yeah. We might have to go to table 4. So we can do that. We'll just
Jeopardy music always. Front row seats got way more front row.
Get up close.
Sorry, if you don't mind, just a question.
Sure. So what specific policies or actions would you like to see from the next provincial government to support the sustainable economic growth of the local business community?
Thank you. That's a big one because small business for Fernie is huge. There are so many small businesses here that are struggling with workforce specifically. We know how many people are coming through Fernie as temporary workers, We're here for a little bit. Seasonal work is huge for what we're seeing here as well. So it's a real struggle for small businesses in Fernie, constantly retraining folks every 3 months, every 6 months, in those roles that we're seeing. So that's a big piece of what we're looking at as well, making sure that we have training for folks wanting to go into those specific roles in those trades. If it's going to restauranteering, if you're going into be a chef, making sure those training opportunities are available here locally through the college or even to the college out in Cranbrook. You can go up to, there's 4 levels of chef training. You can do 1 and 2 towards your Red Seal out in Cranbrook as well, as including servicing here in Fernie. We need housing needs, so we're looking at workforce specific housing, funding things through BC Housing. We know the old fire hall is contentious, but they are looking at using a BC bill piece for that for workforce specific housing, 44 units there, so people have a place to stay. We're not really looking for not only employment but also a place to live. We know the needs here in Fernie are so much more than just specific to that workforce piece. We're giving a higher living wage. You know, we know that the living wage here in Fernie is $23 an hour. Our minimum wage is starting to catch up slowly. We really need to focus on making sure that our younger folks who are coming to this community are able to actually live and work here. We have childcare in schools. Childcare is going to be included in every elementary school across this province. Before and after school care is huge. Parents don't actually work from 9 to 3. You want to make sure your kids are safe and secure, so you're not worried about those things, making work a lot easier and a lot less stressful. We doubled the employer health tax. We're now 90% of businesses qualify for the EHT, keeping electricity costs low, so we're not privatizing BC Hydro, and making sure that those things make sense for businesses. Thank you.
Great. I was a small business owner for 30 years. Restaurants, pubs, nightclubs. Hold that again. It's fun times back then. But I understand the barriers to business. I understand the multiple layers, the death by 1,000 cuts that businesses go through. Even your own reports here today saying that the concerns are operating costs, housing, and labor. Those are things I didn't quite see as much back when I was running businesses. Back when I was running businesses, we used to shoot for about a 15% profit margin. I asked some of my local, and I say 15%, and they just shake their head. They say it's more like 3 or 4%. There's not a big line between profit and failure, and we have to definitely curb that. So the sustainability, to me, that sustainability means jobs. So support those foundational industries. We've got tech, we've got the mines up in the valley. The jobs, a lot of this economy, but that sustainability up there is not going to last forever. Those are resources that will end. We've got probably another 24 to 30 years left. So within a generation, we're going to lose that. The good news is that Fernie is well poised for tourism. We are the beautiful, most beautiful place in the province. We are the gateway from Alberta, also the gateway from the United States. We're only riding that does that. So we have to support our tourism industry 100%. We have to make sure that we do cover up those foundational elements such as operating, housing, and labor. And we can do that, but we need some government wisdom. We need some direction. I don't think the Ministry of Tourism has actually moved much in their budget in the last 10 years. So we need to put some more resources in that way. But housing, I'll give Sam some credit that housing is starting to be looked at, being focused. It's a little late, but that's something we definitely need to put some more resources into. Thank you.
So our next question to the candidates, where do the candidates and their parties stand on investing in affordable housing? There are currently several housing projects underway in the Elk Valley. How will the candidates ensure the local projects go forward and provide the housing we need here? Starting with Pete Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, housing. Yeah, fortunately in British Columbia, houses have started costing us 30 to 40% more in the last 7 years. We need to triple the amount of houses that we're building in BC because we've got so much need and we don't have any houses. And of course, this is going to bring up the cost. We need to invest in infrastructure with our municipalities, like water and sewer, to allow cities and towns to be able to build. If you can't get stuff in the ground, then you can't get houses built. We need to start doing that. We need to also look at unleashing our logging sector so that we can start using our own wood to bring down the cost of lumber. That's something that I think is important. I mean, any way that we can get rid of these costs. We also need to get rid of Clean BC and the STEP code. These are costing us $30,000 to $80,000 more just to build a house, and this has to stop. I mean, they're talking about heat pumps by 2030. Where are we getting the infrastructure for that? We don't have it. They want us to have electric cars and heat pumps in our homes. We don't have the electricity. There's no capacity there. What we're also doing for affordability is we are introducing the largest BC tax cut for renters and homeowners. This removes BC income taxes from $3,000 a month. This will take it right off of your income tax. So now you're starting to save some money for people that are renting and that have mortgages. We also need to get more workers. We don't have any workers right now. We need to start looking. My daughter actually just graduated from what they call the APEX program. And so when she leaves grade 12, she has her first year electrician. That's something that we need to start investing in because we need workers. We need people to be able to build these houses. We can say that we'll have all these options for homes, but if we don't have the people to build them, getting nothing done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gonna say, I think we get some golf clap allowance here, so it offered. BC is a great place to live. People in Fernie are blessed to be able to live and afford to be here. This is one of the greatest places in Canada. But housing is expensive, and we have that feeling all across this country. So in actually looking at affordability and what housing looks like in the Elk Valley, we're delivering new home ownership opportunities with BC Builds that include both rentals and purchasing, so people have home ownership opportunities. We've brought in the speculation tax so that we're opening up more actual houses instead of having empty condos for people to live in, specifically in resort-specific communities. We feel that need. Making it easier to build and rent out secondary and basement suites. We're working with the municipalities and private developers, nonprofits, and unions to build out more construction because we know we're in a housing crisis, and this is an all hands on deck type situation. No single focus is going to make this go away. We're fast tracking BC's factory home construction, so we're using mass timber and other types of growth potential for actually having construction come out faster and more options for builds. And this is the next logical step. We're cutting red tape and relying for construction for single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, townhomes to happen faster and quicker. We're doubling the construction apprentice training in BC so that we can have a good supply of Red Seal certified workers ready to go. We're opening door for first-time home buyers by reducing the upfront costs of buying a home. So under this program, home buyers will pay 60% of the unit's price initially, while the remaining 40% is due when they sell, and then or after 25 years, and the equity of their homes grow so that it's less of a burden. Looking at, we built in Sparring with the Timbers affordable housing complex. That's 30 units that we have on market that we built. We have seniors independent living complex in Elkford. And then we have the approval for building here in Fernie as well for those 44 more specific housing units. So there are things that we're doing, and we're hopeful, and we know that this is a problem that we're having. And we actually have solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Housing, big issue, especially in Fernie. I think these Kootenays, I think 3 municipalities that rank the highest. It's Fernie, Invermere, and Nelson. It's in one of those 3 orders. So we're looking at the ground zero of unaffordability for housing here. I remember in 2017, I ran against a young upstart in the back row there that they brought forward a platform of 114,000 affordable homes in the next 10 years. Well, we're not even close to that right now. So we need to up our game on that for sure. So what do? Well, we need a more collaborative approach at the federal government versus the provincial government. The NDP's current top-down approach, basically the iron fist, forcing municipalities to comply with policies that don't reflect local needs. So every community has what's called an official community plan, an OCP, and those plans are designed for that local municipality to design where those housing projects should go. And that's important because it goes through public consultation. It goes through all kinds of groups that to bring a nice holistic plan to place. one of those decisions that local municipalities use is where is the infrastructure? How good is our deep infrastructure underneath the roads? So can we handle high density here? When the government gets in the way too much, it kind of thwarts all that effort to design it properly. So supply. We need to build the supply, and we need to work locally with all municipal and regional governments. We need to incentivize, not penalize the municipalities for that. BC Builds is a $2 billion program that Sam alluded to, but it's not quite doing the job. BC Housing needs to be a little bit more collaborative in talking to local municipalities on how those check boxes will be administered. Thanks.
To answer the question directly, investing in housing is essential, and the BC Greens have it as a large piece of our fully costed, extensive 2024 election platform. With personal experience, I was a renter here in Fernie for 15 years. I know what it's like to be costed out of housing. I'm not anymore, thank goodness, but I was rent evicted once in 2016. I was evicted in 2021. As of last year, I'm no longer a renter, but I was a renter in this province for 30 years. Everyone living in BC must have a secure home that they can afford and that meets their needs, whether they're a renter or an owner. It's a fundamental human right. Like, the fact that people may not have that is deeply unfair. Wellness comes from housing. If we don't have housing, we often have physical and mental health issues. We could have substance use and addiction issues. It's harder to have a job. We know that. It's harder to get an education. So I want to highlight a few of the commitments that are in the BC Greens platform around housing. We want to implement vacancy control measures to support renters. What that means is that the price of rent would be tied to your unit and not to you as a renter. So if I'm paying $2,000 a month where I live and I move out, the owner of that unit can't turn around and offer it for rent to the next renter for $3,000. Like, it has to stay the same. Rents are just growing exponentially, and that's not fair. We also would like to increase funding for 2 essential programs, shelter aid for renters and the rental assistance program. Housing, of course, also needs water, sewerage, and infrastructure. And the BC Greens would like to see reworking of BC Housing so that municipalities directly get regular annual funding for housing that they know works for their community without the bulk of the bureaucracy with the middle people in BC Housing. Thank you.
Next question. How do you propose to advocate for better healthcare? In particular, lobbying the government to have a better relationship with Alberta Health so our residents do not have to travel to the interior.
Down. So the Alberta Health piece is something that we live with our daughter's arthritis. We actually do take her to see her rheumatoid specialist in Calgary at the Calgary Children's Hospital. But it's a battle. It's not enjoyable. It's not something we love to do. We want to see more of that growth so that we're not having to travel to Alberta and having to rely on that system. We need to build up what we have here in these Kootenays so that we're not having those pieces. And, we're looking at that. We've improved how doctors are paid, and we've added the 865 family doctors, registered 6,300 new nurses. We have the fastest growing nursing workforce in Canada. And those are what we're looking at. We're looking at streamlining those things. We've added 120 new spaces for doctors as well, of what we're seeing. So they're going to do their work. We're building a new medical school in Surrey as well through SMU. So we're training more doctors, and these are things. We're not going to have an overnight solution, but we're really working at getting those parts and pieces at a point where we're not relying on those systems. We're working with the BC Nurses Union. We've agreed to nurse-to-patient ratios, knowing that we'll never exceed 4:1, and it's something directly built by the BC Nurses Union because that's what they see. They want patient care to be priority 1, and we agree. We're building new urgent primary care centers so that we can see more patient load go down. If you need to see a doctor, you can see a doctor. We have the one built in Cranbrook, and we're building the one in Elford. These are steps in the ways that we're making things more effective for us here in the Kootenays. We've doubled the amount of MRIs completed each year to $330,000 since 330,000 people since 2017. And we need that here in Fernie. We want to make sure that we're not having to send people out deep into Cranbrook for those services so we can get CTs on a regular basis. We can get those MRIs, and we're investing in those. We've seen that all over the province. We've had 18 new MRI scanners throughout, and this is the progress that the BCNDP is bringing through. And we want to make sure that we're putting a focus here in Fernie, so we have that going as well. Thank you.
Well, when I was on the regional district, it was myself and the regional district staff, the hospital board that brought forward the MRI to Cranbrook. Something the regional district graciously sponsored and funded. It was great, but healthcare, access to healthcare in this area is, some say it's crumbling. It's falling apart. It's done. There used to be a good two-way street between us and Alberta at one time. That's been severed. It's been getting increasingly worse. Now we have patients that are traveling 1,000 kilometers over 6 mountain passes on a good day. From here to Kelowna, it's 8 hours possibly on a good day. In the winter, sometimes completely impossible. I've been very committed to bringing healthcare services here, because if we can't get it in Alberta, we have to build that capacity here at our regional hospital. I've been working hand in hand with our local chair of the hospital board, Dave Wilkes, who's here. I've worked with Dean McCarrick, who is our former chair, to expand our renal and oncology services at the regional hospital. Been very staunch supporter with building radiation treatment here. I actually have terrible conversations with constituents who forego radiation treatment because they can't afford it. It's too far to go. There's no family support. And that's a terrible conversation to have around the dinner table. Dad's not going to get the radiation treatment that's going to give him a better quality of life. So that is something that is near and dear to my heart. It's something I'm committed to. I'm going to bring that forward. We're getting close. I think we're getting close. At least it's on the radar. It's not a no anymore. So I just want, that's one of the reasons I'm running, is to make sure we get that over the finish line, that we bring expanded services to our healthcare in Cranbrook. Thanks.
How to advocate for better healthcare is a great question. I know a lot about prevention, disease prevention, health promotion. That's my career in public health with Interior Health for over a decade. So I could definitely speak to that, but I want to just first of all lay out to everybody here that I'm speaking as a BC Greens candidate, not as an Interior Health employee, as I share these ideas. So the healthcare system needs to keep people well. If we focus on prevention, we all know it's way cheaper. It's way cheaper. It's more compassionate if we look after people at the beginning of an illness or before they get ill than if we wait till the situation is bad. With the healthcare spending pretty much the biggest part of the budget in the province and getting worse, we have to focus way more on prevention. It's just the only effective way to do it. I think Tom outlined the challenges very well about the Alberta government. I know him and I, in our separate circles, have been working on this challenge for a long time. It seems to be an issue with the Alberta government, and I would definitely advocate for further negotiations and more discussions between top tiers of the BC government and top tiers of the Alberta government, so that we can make sure those services get met. However, at the same time as we're doing these negotiations, we need to ensure services are happening here, or that patients have transport available for services in Kelowna or Vancouver or elsewhere. The BC Greens, as I mentioned earlier, have a fully costed election platform. We were the first party to release a platform. Not everybody here has a platform that they can refer to. With our extensive pages about healthcare, one of the things we recommend is really reducing the bulk of the 7 health authorities we have in this province. Probably not everybody knows we have 7 health authorities. There's a lot of money that goes into maintaining that administration and bureaucratic structure. We think healthcare can be restructured, delivered way more efficiently. People can have prevention and health could improve. Thank you.
Another crisis that we have in BC. There's so many. This is crazy. I'm sure that everybody knows that 1 in 5 people don't even have a doctor in BC. It's really tough. We have an exciting plan, actually. It's called Patients First. We put it out. We're going to do a European type style where your universal healthcare will be at the top, but you're going to have options. So if you're waiting on a waiting list for care and you have an option that comes up that is a private option, that money will actually follow the patient instead of Interior Health deciding where that money's going to go. So there's an option there. Something exciting as well. I've been talking with the BC Doctors Association, and they've got some really great ideas that we can use with this new healthcare system. A physician assistant is a person that can work under a doctor under their license. Right now, the NDP have allowed physician assistants to take schooling at the college, but they can only work for Interior Health. They can't work for anybody else. And of course, a doctor is a private business. So what we can do, guys, is with these efficient physician assistants, is we can actually use them to prop up the practice for the doctor to allow them to take on more clients. So now all of a sudden we have an option where everybody can have a doctor. It's an amazing idea. The other thing that we can do, especially in rural areas like this, is use personal care paramedics. These people are sitting in rural areas. They don't even work full time. They're just sitting there waiting for things to happen. These people can be out working under these doctors and going to do home care with people. They can be going from home to home and making sure that people be in their home as well. So it's an exciting idea. People can have doctors again and get care. Thank you.
Candidates, what is your stance on policies such as removing the land transfer tax to reduce housing costs, lobby to reverse the new capital gains policy, review and adjusting the outdated luxury car tax, and reviewing and changing the agricultural land reserve to ensure more democratic decision making? Tom. It is a kind of a long-winded, so what is your stance on policies such as removing the land transfer tax to reduce housing costs, lobby to reverse the new capital gains policy, review and adjust the outdated luxury car tax, and reviewing and changing the agricultural land reserve to ensure more democratic decision making?
That's quite a laundry list. I'll try to tackle that one at a time. Let's start at the ALR first. I'll go in reverse order. The Agricultural Land Reserve, as you know, it's a section of land throughout the province. It's been identified to grow agricultural products. Fortunately, actually, the diversity of British Columbia is pretty wide. And through that diversity, we have different soil types ranging anywhere from 1, 2, which is very fertile, stuff you'd see in the Fraser Valley, to more 4, 5, 6, 7s up here in the Kootenays. So when the ALR came in about 1974, the ALR was kind of brought in with a broad brush. They kind of scoped it out. They looked at the land. They said, okay, this is our land. This is fertile soil that we can all grow good stuff on. And they said that they'd come back in about 5 years just to kind of survey the land out, make sure that they had it right. Well, as many ranchers know in this area, there's a lot of ALR land that you can't even grow crabgrass on. But they take it in stride and they try to make their farms sustainable. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of use other than just agricultural land. So we used to have a zone 1 and a zone 2. And zone 2 was for additional land use, where you put a little extra revenue generator to make your farm more sustainable. That's been gone. He took that zone 2 away. I better get going because I got 3 more. The car tax, luxury car tax, $55,000, ridiculous. I mean, you can't even buy a new vehicle for even 70, 80, 90,000. Somebody just told me they had bought a vehicle for 110,000. It's basically standard pickup. So we need to increase the luxury car tax. It's anything but luxury. Capital gains, 100%. That is people's pensions. Those are those entrepreneurs that saved and scrimped their whole lives, put their values into the properties they bought. and now they can't, they're gonna get taxed to death on those capital gains. The land transfer tax, that's something that I would incentivize for young first-time home buyers to get rid of under $1 million and seniors.
Thank you. Bit of a different approach, and I'm going to take this opportunity to outline what a lot of people don't realize is sort of the BC Greens approach to government, which is really different from the other parties. A lot of time, I know you know this probably, a lot of time is wasted in the government, in the legislature, with fighting, arguing, finger pointing, blaming, and people in these like power positions of like saying no to good ideas, you know, just refusing to work together. So in the last few minutes, I made some notes here. So to look at those above issues that Martin went over, the BC Greens, we always want to be democratic, always improving our democracy. And that's by using evidence-based decision-making, knowledge holders, local data, and expert advice. And so I would say for any of those issues, we need all those things. We need local knowledge, we need data, we need expert advice, collaboration between all parties to reach good regional and local decisions. For one example with the BC Greens is we've talked for a long time about, we think that there should be regional caucuses. So if in Kootenay-Rockies, there's a BC Green who's elected, in the next riding of Columbia River Revelstoke, maybe there's a Conservative elected, maybe in the next riding over Central Kootenay, perhaps there's an NDP elected. There's no reason why we shouldn't be working together on regional issues like the ALR, like other things that we all think that we should be making decisions about together. So the BC Greens approach, I'm not directly answering the question, but I really enjoy this opportunity to really show you how we do government different. We want to be more efficient. We really want to be guided by proper knowledge so we can work together making decisions that work for everybody. Thank you.
ALR, yeah, it needs to be looked at. It's old. There's land out there that is ALR and you can't even grow anything on it. It's just, if we're driving there, and so just go dirt biking there because there's nothing you can get there. So that needs to change. ALR needs to go get completely revamped for sure. Can't read my own writing. Holy man. Capital gains. This is something there is hope, guys. I was talking to current MP, Rob Morrison, and this is something that's going to get overturned. They're going to get rid of that. It just causes a lot of issues, and so we are going to fight for that. And so is our federal government, should they get in next year, which looks like they will. So that's some exciting news there. Election car tax, of course. Yeah, 55,000. I mean, I worked in the car industry. 55 grand doesn't get you much for a vehicle. I mean, it's your base now. So I don't know how they call that luxury. Vehicles are crazy expensive. And of course, as a conservative, we like less taxes. So we're going to make sure that happens. Just one that I have. Transfer tax. So we know that this government is taxing like crazy. They've put in 33 taxes since they came into government in 2017. There's a lot of things that we need to roll back and have a look at. And once we become more majority government in 10 days, we're going to look at those books and we are going to look at what taxes need to be cut. And we are going to make sure that we can make life more affordable for everybody by looking at the taxes that don't make sense, that need to be moved. And land tax transfers, of course, would be a great thing for people to help first-time home buyers by making sure that they can get into a new house. Thank you.
Not a lot. Whoever wrote this question had a lot and wanted to make sure they got chosen. So here we go. For the ALR, I think that democratic process decision making makes sense if you start considering what we're regionally looking at. The amount of ALR land we have out here is huge, but a lot of that was brought in for the Lower Mainland because they have such a lack of space And we want to make sure that the growers keep their land to keep feeding us. The amount of food that we get from the Lower Mainland that comes up here in Beachfield, it's important. So we see that. I understand that we have a lot of land out here, and Tom said it best. There's not a lot that is super high producing in comparison to what the get for yields in down in the Bridge Valley. So I think that's an uphill battle. We can definitely have those conversations and see where that leads in knowing what that looks like. In looking at that ALR decision making as well, we want to increase density. We keep talking about housing. If you put up a subdivision in the middle of nowhere, where's the infrastructure? What are we doing with water? What are we doing with our sewer? How are we actually putting power in there? The cost for actually building that up, it doesn't really work. Increase that density in the cities where you actually have the infrastructure we can tie into makes so much more sense. We know that we have housing issues. We want our kids to be able to come home, afford living here, and not have to be put out to the outskirts as much as possible. And that's what we're going to focus on and concentrate on to make sure that we are increasing that density in spaces that it makes sense. Luxury tax, this is one of the ones where car manufacturers, we saw it post-COVID, this is when prices shot up, and it was based on manufacturing, where we're looking at for costing. That's something that luxury tax is something that affects a lot more vehicles now. We also still have people buying $300,000 cars. You would think that the taxing on there is definitely much different versus if you have something for a farm vehicle, and the luxury tax is different when it's for commercial purposes regardless. I didn't get to them all, and I apologize, but it was quite a bit that answers something. Thank you.
Wendy, are you out there? How are we doing with our questions from the inside? Okay, so we're gonna end the first question period, and we've done the questions that we were gonna ask for this period. Do you want me to go one more? Okay. Candidates, what will you do to promote a stable municipal funding stream that supports local governments, reducing their reliance on residential, commercial, and industrial property taxes to fund services and infrastructure that should be provincially supported? Starting with Pete. I can, yeah. What? Don't shoot the messenger, Andre. What will you do to promote a stable municipal funding stream that supports local governments, reducing their reliance on residential, commercial, and industrial property taxes to fund services and infrastructure that should be provincially supported? Starting with Pete.
I wrote a pen. I don't even need my binder for this one. So here's where I say we need to get our house in order. In BC, we need to start making revenue. And the way we're going to do that is unleashing our natural resource sector. That's the way we're going to start paying for stuff. We can't just keep taxing. We can't just keep increasing taxes. We need to start making some money. So what we want to do is we want to be able to make sure that we're going to remove permits. Not all the permits, but we need to look at what permits make sense and what don't. We need to get our logging industry going. We've got 16 mines in BC right now that are permitted or almost permitted and ready to go. Those mines are going to produce $804 billion in revenue. That's how we're going to get stuff done, folks. We're going to start being able to use the money instead of the taxes to be able to support our local communities. Once we have the money and we've got the cash flowing, the revenue going, that's where we can start investing in our communities, in hospitals, in schools. But you know, guys, if we don't get our house in order first, if we don't get our stuff figured out on our side, we can't help anybody. And so logging, of course, is a huge industry in this area that is just being decimated. We need to start helping these small businesses and these loggers get back out there to do their job and to get back out and getting these logs that are out there. I mean, it's going to help us on both sides as well. It's also going to help us with our fire issue, because if they're out there and they're out there cleaning up the area and cleaning up the mess, then we're getting our economy going. we're getting the revenue, the GDP that we need, and we're also getting things cleaned up so that we're not going to have these huge issues with these fires. There is 60 million hectares of land in British Columbia in trees, and we want to unleash 22 billion hectares of those to start getting our industry back and going. Like I said, guys, once we get the revenue, the GDP, we can start investing in our local communities. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a tough one at the end of the day. I know that he's talking about unleashing the resourcing, but we have the coal mines here, and we know with the Mine Tax Sharing Act of just how hard it is to get them to pay their fair share and increase what they're giving us in that tax sharing agreement anyways, right? So they fight with us every single step of the way. On City Council in Sparwood, if we're looking at making sure that they're paying their fair share and expanding what we're looking at, it's like getting blood on the stone. Like they don't want to pay extra no matter what they are. So I don't understand how we're going to unleash the resource sector to pay us more, because it's hard enough to get them to pay what they're supposed to at this point and expand what that is. Asking for more posts, just it's not happening. With that, you know, this 33 tax thing as well. I Googled it the other day because it's been brought up a few times in the forums. The only name that comes up is Tom and Pete saying that we have 33 new taxes. There are new taxes, and it's for the top 2%. So that's what we're looking at focusing as well, of making sure that we're having that fair share of tax burden borne by others as well. That top 2% we found is not paying their fair share into what it is, and that burden is falling back onto the rest of us as residents here in these Kootenays especially. So we want to make sure we're focusing on those bits as well. And then realistically, there is a lot we can do on the commercial side of things to expand what we have, the services that we have here in Fernie and Sparwood and what that looks like. And we really want to make sure that we look at that as well. If you build more houses, you share that tax pool. So it actually brings down how much taxes you will actually have to go up. If you have more houses paying into the same pool, that pool then gets bigger. You pay less per property tax. So actually having a growth plan of how we're actually building out and increasing that housing will actually help with the tax burden. And that's part of the goal that we're doing, is focusing so much on that housing piece because we want to make sure that we're keeping that tax burden for seniors and everyone else as low as possible. Thank you.
Sam, you can't call me out without a response to that. 33 new or increased taxes, 100%, $20 billion more a year in taxation now than we did in 2017. Top 2%, I don't know, there was a tax placed on Netflix. There's a tax placed on soft drinks. There was a tax placed on the bag tax, who goes grocery shopping, $2 bag tax on that. There was a tax on the freedom of information, getting the freedom of information that cost you $10 now to access freedom of information. Only the NDP can take the free out of freedom. So sorry, Sam, it's not the top 2%. I gotta strongly disagree to that. So funding stream, for sure. What we used to have was something that was called the Rural Dividend Fund. That was a fund that was created by former government, and I was associated with it one time. And they brought good streams of revenue to rural communities, and it was through things like our natural resource sector. Yes, there is 14 mines actually. There's 2 expansions, but it's a lot of money. It's almost $1 trillion. That money can be siphoned and put into this a new rural dividend fund if the government that's going to be elected on October 20th sees their right way of doing that. I think that'd be a really good start. That really helped a lot of rural communities build the infrastructure, all the things that they need to fund a clean revenue stream. Cut the bureaucracy. How about that? There's 140,000 new public service jobs. Now, some of those are necessary, but we've seen an increase in the bureaucracy from 28,000 jobs to 36,000 jobs. The Premier's ministry alone it's got more of a budget. It would be in the top 4 ministries. That's how bad it is. The Premier Eby decides that he needs more bureaucrats in his office than the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction. So we got to trim the fat there, folks. Thanks.
Stable municipal funding is absolutely essential. I've been advocating for this in my job with Interior Health for over a decade. I work helping municipalities get funding. I get a lot of municipalities funding. I've been helping Fernie, well, over the years, I've helped Fernie get funding for their affordable housing strategy. Town of Golden, recently, I got them some age-friendly planning funding. I got the funding for all the poverty reduction strategy and planning work that happened in the city of Cranbrook. There's been lots more. But every year after UBCM, when the resolution booklet comes out and I read through everything, I'm always disappointed that the resolutions that get put forward by local government experts, by council members, that I'm disappointed so many of them get ignored by the government. The municipalities and the people that run them are the experts on what they need. When they need infrastructure funding, when they need funding for essential services, that's funding for all of us. That's community funding that each of us benefits from. I would advocate, and the BC Greens also advocate, for much more decision-making power with municipalities, because municipalities are the knowledge experts. They're the regional experts. They understand what's needed in their communities. We would like to take out, like I said, some of that bulk of bureaucracy that we see in both healthcare and in housing with the health authorities and the BC Housing Organization, so that municipalities can more directly get funding, especially stable infrastructure funding annually. That's something the BC Greens have committed to in our platform. And if we have thriving communities, healthy communities, which I know a lot about, we'll all be better off. Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving pretty good. So we're going to ask one more question from the survey. And this is regarding mental health. Mental health has been underfunded and underserviced in BC, especially in this region, for decades. How do you and your party plan to address the massive gaps in services, especially for youth? Kerri.
So before my position at Interior Health, I was a mental health counselor and a youth addictions counselor here in the Elk Valley, from Elkford down to the South Country. This is something I know a lot about. Healthy public policy also comes into play here. So I feel well versed to talk to this subject. It's an essential subject, especially like Martin said, about youth and addressing youth. The BC Greens have committed to integrate mental health education throughout the K-12 curriculum. We would like to ensure that mental health is covered by our provincial MSP for 6 fully covered visits for every resident of the province each year. And I think a lot of us could relate to the fact that maybe if there's a dramatic change at home, a separation, a divorce, a loss, a change of job, if we were able to see a mental health professional a couple, 3 times, maybe up to 6 times, it could make a world of a difference for everybody. So mental health care is health care. Health care needs to be paid for by the government. Prevention, again, is key here. We know that with preventative measures, the whole healthcare system saves money. To treat mental health means to be simultaneously treating other causes of poor mental health, which I mentioned earlier. These are causes of stress, often housing, substance use, addictions, trauma. All of these things can work together to create poor mental health. And when we have a full community where our basic needs are met, people aren't struggling to pay the bills, everybody's mental health is better. Above all else, we should never criminalize mental health issues. Mental health, poor mental health, is not a crime. We want to ensure full regulation of all psychotherapeutic professions so that everybody has access to expert help. Thank you.
Mental health leads to a lot of issues. And I think in our schools, missing it. We just stop encouraging kids to think that drugs are safe and that those things are good good thing to turn to. In our schools, we need to start getting these kids more support. Some of the things that are being taught in our schools now, we're not helping these kids at all. We're not holding them accountable. I think there's a lot of structure in school right now that is causing these kids to have more issues because they're not being taught the way that they should be, as far as I'm concerned. Kids need to be taught how to think, not what to think. And right now, there's a lot of things going on in the schools. I mean, my kids go to school, and my daughter was saying that they come in with these crack pipes and these other things, and they're telling the kids how, if you're going to use this stuff, here you go, we're going to have this stuff out to you guys. And so is this the way that we're going to let people deal with mental health? Encourage them to take drugs? I don't think that's a really good idea. I think that we need to support them. Teachers need to get more support. We need more EAs in there that can support the kids as well, and make sure that we have a safe environment for our children. Thanks.
Bam. I feel like there's going to be a bit of fact checking going on. I think that in looking at mental health assistance and programs that we have for kids specifically, we can go into that and then where that kind of leads into. There's a lot of things that the BCNDP have currently started that we want to continue providing. We've launched a student and family affordability fund so that teachers and principals can help families who need extra help with school supplies, field trips, meals, snacks. We've had students whose prescriptions have been covered by this as well. It's at the discretion of those people who know those kids the best. Those EAs, the teachers, the principals, they know those kids throughout, and we need to support that. We need to understand what that looks like. We have stuff that they've done food hampers. We know that they've done clothes. They've done vocational certifications for kids who are in high school who need that funding to go to those extra classes and get that vocational funding. Helping these kids get out of those situations and expand their lives so they're doing things that they want to do is important. We're increasing, support for students in critical grades from kindergarten to grade 3. We want to have an EA in every single class, so an educational assistant to help with those students who need a little bit more assistance and not just leave them behind and say, this is not okay. It is okay. If you have some time, you need the extra learning, we will provide you the help so that every kid goes to school. The Elk Valley and our region in SD5 has some of the highest graduation rates in BC, between 96 and 99%. That's something that we should be proud of. We're helping setting up our kids for success, and that's what we want to continue doing. We know that for mental health awareness, we're looking at what we need to do for that as well. There's workers that we're training for mental health supporting. We're building supportive housing as well. So there's 24 hours a day care. We're helping people access more of those supports as needed, and we're opening more complex care housing so that there is a situation that they're supported throughout their young adulthood lives as well, so that no one gets put into a place and said, we're not being supported. We want to make sure every single person in BC has support. Thank you.
Very sensitive topic. Mental health starts with our youth, young. It can start as easy as just a warm meal in the morning. And that's the truth. My wife is a social worker. She works with starting in the education, starting at grade, as soon as you can walk, basically. We need to make sure that our kids are looked after. So when they enter the education field, when they get into kindergarten, they need a warm. It is preventative maintenance, like Kerri said. We need to start small. We need to start with prevention, education, and get those kids. I mean, I've got kids myself. I see a lot of problems with social media. I know anxiety is up. I think 23% increase in anxiety and other mental health issues over just the last 10 years alone. I looked at social media and phones, smartphones. I don't think they're great. So we need to start there. Then, of course, you get into addictions. We're losing about 7 people a day to addiction, to overdose. It's a terrible statistic. And when we talk about our youth, You know, I think everybody has a story. We just lost a child in Cranbrook, 13-year-old. Absolute travesty. So she overdosed 5 days. She overdosed and then she was released from the hospital. And then she succumbed to a fatal overdose 5 days later. That, in my opinion, that was completely 100% preventable. And what I mean by that is instilling involuntary care when needed. When these children have an obvious issue, we have to make sure that they're safe first. And the involuntary care is one of those measures that we can use. It's a last resort, but I mean, it's something that we bring forward here in our government. Thanks.
Okay, so we're gonna now proceed to give the candidates questions that were put forward here in the forum. And we're gonna start with one that seems a little long-winded, but if you just concentrate on the first sentence. Thoughts, standpoint on short-term rentals. Given the new BC legislation affects cities with large populations, but not towns like Fernie, Golden, Kimberley, and Pierre, we would love to hear what further change you'd like to see implemented that would affect our region. And we're starting with Pete.
Short-term rentals, as far as Airbnb go, we will be reversing that. The conservative party doesn't think that should be a provincial issue. It should be a municipal issue. So we're going to allow the municipalities to make their decisions on that part as well. Fernie, yeah, housing here is tough. And we need to look at a local housing model such like Whistler, with the staff housing co-ops and housing corporations in the city. I think that's a good way that's going to work here as well. We need to allow people to do what they want with their homes. And if they want to turn them into short-term rentals, they should be able to do that. And we want to help, of course, as a provincial government with infrastructure, helping people to be able to build more homes, especially in Gold or in Fernie here. We're pretty tough to find a place. My cousin actually just owned Tim Hortons, him and his wife, and they were trying to make a growth in the business, but they just couldn't get a place for employees to live. And it was tough to find people to come in. They could afford to be able to be here and do that. So we need to look at some other options to be able to get some people into these places, Fernie and in our communities. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to hear that he has family members who couldn't find affordable housing for their workers because of short-term rentals. It sounds eerily similar to what we have specifically here in Fernie. And that's exactly it. We put that speculation tax in place to make sure that we're bringing homes and condos that are empty and vacant, that are used for Airbnbs, to be used for long-term rentals, so that people who are in their early years can actually afford a place to be in our community that they choose. That's huge. And we've seen it actually make a profound difference. 20,000 units in Vancouver alone are now full-time rental units, not Airbnbs. We've seen the rental prices in those markets come down 7.2%. That's exactly what this is supposed to, and it's working. These are the kind of things that they want to talk about. And we have conservative candidates up here, and they're all saying the same thing. These taxes aren't working. They are. They're just not working for the top 2% of us who own bajillion pieces of land and property. But it is working for those young kids who want to come out and start renting and being where they want to be. And it's great for us because they get to come home. I don't want my kids to grow up, leave for school, come home, and then not be able to live in the same community as because they can't afford it, because they can't find a place, because it's an Airbnb, because we live in a resort community, and that's what the focus is. We just need to focus on making sure our kids can come home and work in our communities, and that's the big focus that we've really put on there. Another one is, we've built 80,000 units of the 117,000 promised. It's great that we say that, we can't build 117,000. It's still 80,000. We're making actual differences. And it's all doom and gloom. Apparently, we're dropping like flies and we have nowhere to live. But here we are. The BC NDP's programs that we're putting in place are actually having successes. And we're seeing it on a daily basis. And we want to continue with that. That OCP change, increasing density, that's major for places like Fernie. Because that OCP change would take years. And it has taken years. But by putting a limit on it for every community in PC, it's fair. And it got done. And we can build density here as well. Thank you, Tom.
Well, I'm gonna cut you some slack, Sam. Actually, it wasn't 117, it was 114, so you got another 3,000 off the list, but we're still not even close to that, folks. So short-term rentals, yeah, this needs to be, we're very diverse in British Columbia, rural towns, urban towns, different OCPs throughout the province, different municipalities. So we need to put that back in the hands of the municipalities. The municipalities should be making those decisions 100%. We need a healthy mix of both. So Sam talks about the top 2%. I mean, hoteliers and people that own great big share in hotels are probably going to benefit from if we stop short-term rentals. We're just going to be driving up the cost of, I mean, have you been to Vancouver and seen what the one night stay in a Sheraton is these days? It's quite a bit. I can't stay there. So anyways, we need to obviously have a healthy mix of both and get the, especially a town like Fernie. I want to leave this building in one piece because I know it's a very hot, contentious issue. But if we have people that have short-term rentals, and if the city designates it as an area, then, and we have the proper infrastructure and the proper parking, then 100% we should be going that way. And anybody that moves into those areas should be well aware that, there might be the odd party every once in a while. If you're up at the Fernie Ski Hill, for example, you know that it's, people want to go there and recreate and have a good time. And so then you should be aware of those things. So anyways, it's a healthy mix of both. We need the regional governments and the municipal governments to get aligned. I think there's a disconnect there sometimes between regional authorities and municipal authorities on how they want to see those OCPs go outside the municipalities that affect the town like Fernie. So get those back in the game and try to live amongst one another. It's important.
Thanks. The need that is highlighted by this question is the need for affordable rentals. So it's a question about short-term rentals, but the real need is that renters need places to live, that they can afford, that they can depend on for secure housing. I've been part of these short-term rental conversations and affordable housing conversations around the region for a long time now. I've, of course, I was one of the founders of the Fernie Housing Solutions Working Group, amongst other committees that I've been sitting on or starting. And we need government to invest in affordable housing, especially non-market rentals, so that our renters have homes to live in, and then Airbnbs can run like businesses, short-term rentals and such. The fact that these two issues have come together in sort of a convergence where there's a push and pull and it's sort of become one issue, that doesn't make sense. We need to tear them apart to look at them separately. It's really important to gather accurate data. I think not just me, the BC Greens, we were happy with a lot of the changes that have been legislated in the past government with the NDP. However, BC Greens in the legislature thought it was very unfair that government legislation was pushed forward on housing so fast the municipalities did not get a chance to weigh in and be consulted. So like I've been saying, we really like to guide our legislation and the way we govern by evidence and local data. And because of that, it's important to measure progress over time and find out if the goals you set, if they're getting reached. Most governments don't bother to set goals, like provincially. It's really hard, even in the health authority. There's like not a lot of goal setting. There's not a lot of measurement to even know, are we getting where we say we want to go? And then governments get scared because if they say, oh, we should do this, and then there's some backlash from the business community or wealthy homeowners, then they backtrack and they say, oh no, never mind. We don't want to do. Are you going to set a goal and measure progress and do what you say you're going to do and meet the need for housing or not? Thank you.
Next question. How will you address the long-term shortage of medical professionals and facilities?
starting with Sam.
Kind of alluded this as earlier as well. You know, we have improved the doctor pay last year, and we've seen 800 new doctors come into the province after that alone. We have 400,000 people across the province who've actually been taken off of the waiting list and connected with a family doctor. By the end of 2025, anybody who's on that wait list, our projections show that no one's going to be on that wait list, and we'll have people being able to match up with the doctors at will. We're building a new medical school. We've added 128 new student spaces for the existing medical school at UBC. We've opened the UPCCs. These are the parts and pieces that we're really working on. What we really need to focus on here specifically in Fernie is making sure that the hospital here has the services it needs. We know that it's harder to retain a doctor when you have lagging services and conditions. So we want to make sure that those are addressed so that we don't lose doctors, because we can't afford to lose doctors. It's a domino effect. You lose a doctor in Fernie, that caseload adds on to Sparwood. You lose a doctor in Sparwood, that's adding a caseload that they maybe would have taken up in Elkford. And we don't want to make sure, we want to make sure we don't have any of those closures that we see up north and the other rural areas. We've been fairly blessed with not having the closures for those hospitals and things. Providing financial assistance for people who need to leave town for medical services. So if you do have to leave town and you're driving, your mileage will be paid for, and that's up front. You're not having to wait for what that is. So if you do have to travel to Cranbrook or beyond, if you got to go to Kelowna, that's a program that we put in place for that as well. What we want for here in Fernie, the need that we've heard from the medical staff here has been an increase in having at least potentially a CT scan or an MRI, and then upgrading the facility as well, so that people aren't having to have be dropped off at the ER. We've all been to this ER. It's not the greatest setup for what it is. And we want to make sure we invest in that, and we have been throughout the province, and that's what you get with the BC NDP, is we're actually making focus on people and the locals, and making sure that makes sense for all of us. Thanks.
Well, Sam would have you believe everything's fine in healthcare in BC. I don't think so at all. Projections, numbers, plans. I haven't seen a lot of good results in the last little bit. Cancer wait times are the longest in British Columbia than any other province right now. You know, we used to have that relationship we talked about earlier to Alberta for cancer treatment and that. What was the NDP solution? It was to open up the corridor between Vancouver and Bellingham, Washington. So I don't know if anybody knows this or not, but we're spending about $130 million the next couple of years to send people to private health care in Bellingham, Washington, with an accompaniment. And I'm happy for the folks that go there. Don't get me wrong, but we're spending $130 million of taxpayer money to send people from British Columbia to Bellingham, Washington, to private healthcare clinics. And yet we can't get that two-way street between BC and Alberta. And why is that? Well, probably because we live in rural BC in the southeast corner, a million miles away from Victoria. That's primarily exactly the reason why I'm running as an independent right now. We need somebody to focus 100% on these unique challenges that we have here in the southeast corner. We need to bring that to Victoria in a collaborative way. Work with people like Kerri and anybody that wants to work along with us, and to bring that message. And if we have a minority government that's in place that most people think is going to happen, then that leverage that I will have as a balance of power between myself and probably several other MLAs that are running as independents, we will bring that message right to Victoria. Those will be one of our conditions, to make sure that we have that access to healthcare, so that we have that two-way street to Alberta, or at least increase the capacity we have at our own healthcare facilities here in Cranbrook.
Can you read the question again?
I sure can. How will you address the long-term shortage of medical professionals and facilities?
Thanks. Okay, the long-term shortage. We know that we do have aging infrastructure here at the hospital. I want to say again, I'm not going to slag my employer. I don't mean to say anything bad about Interior Health. So as a BC Greens candidate, we really think that to retain doctors and encourage more staff to be working in the profession, we really need to make it easier to work and make the conditions of working better. We need updated, modern facilities that doctors and physicians and nurses are able to work in well, that they're able to do their jobs, that they have housing, that they have childcare, and all the structures that are required for them to show up at work. We don't have a doctor shortage in this province. Data shows us that BC has more doctors per capita than any other province in the country, except for Nova Scotia. We're tied with Nova Scotia. But we have a serious problem getting doctors to show up at work because of aging infrastructure, poor support at work, not the right kind of conditions, again, for their families with housing and childcare and what have you. So we need to be guided by experts, including doctors, as I've said before, who will tell you about the list of things that we need to make their working conditions better. I've heard lots of smart, creative ideas at work here at the Elk Valley Hospital about ways that they could save money, be more effective, do better patient care. And there seems to be a real lack of like reaching the health authority or the Ministry of Health with those recommendations. Checking my notes. Oh yeah, I have. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Well, I kind of talked about this already once, about the teams. Let's just talk a bit more about getting more doctors to, when the BC Doctors Association did some of their studies, they actually found, of course, that we have this ER in Elkford that needs to be reopened. And we can't seem to find people to go there. Well, they put out a job posting just to see how many people they would actually get for interest for the area. And there's a lot of IMGs, this immigrant doctors, of course, that are in the province that just need a bit of schooling, but they can actually be starting to do their practice. And there was 78 78 that applied. So that's crazy. Like if we were able to get these people into doing what they do, they already have the training. They would be able to help with these issues that we have. We've got 19,000 vacant healthcare jobs in BC. We need 26,000 more nurses, or 26,000 more nurses in BC by 2031 because of the aging and the people moving out. But what do we need to do that? We need to incentivize people to start coming to these areas. So with nurses, of course, we can incentivize, paying for schooling and those kind of things and upping their pay to get them into these areas. We also need to make sure that the places that these people are working in are safe. Right now, nurses don't feel safe working in hospitals. People can actually walk in with a bag and they don't even look in the bag to see what's in there. And there could be anything in there. There could be drugs, there could be a gun. We need to make sure that things are getting safer for the people that are working there. Also, too, nurses are 40% of their job is just administration. We need to get them back to be able to do the care because you know what? If they don't like the job that they're doing, they're going to leave, and then we're going to have a huge issue. Thank you.
Candidates, how would you support and promote inclusivity in our region, including your stance on the rights of 2S LGBTQ plus people? Tom.
Well, inclusivity is important. Unity is important. LGBTQIA plus community is important. From my stance, I don't have a party platform, so I'll speak from the heart. Doesn't matter to me who you pray to, who you love. It's what matters in the heart. And I've been blessed enough to watch and learn from many different communities that have been marginalized over the years. And we're getting there. We're getting there for sure. I mean, I take part. I was just at the Pride event here a couple of weeks ago, and it was a beautiful ceremony. And there was lots of fun, and there was bands and music, food, and great stuff. Unfortunately, we do still have that element of hate, whether it's race, whether it's lifestyle, religion, you name it. I'm in Victoria quite a bit, and we see the protests on the front lawns of the legislature. And quite honestly, I have to scratch my head, and I get pretty sad when I see some of the people that have the hate that they have people that are different than them. So we've seen a lot of different communities come to Canada, and whether they're different ethnic communities, in my opinion, that's what makes British Columbia so great. Our diversity, and whether it's the landscape or the economy or the municipalities and geography, also the people. It's a beautiful thing, and I think we should be welcoming that more. So it starts in the schools. It starts understanding to love one another, and that's never a bad thing, no matter how different somebody is. So we definitely need to start that education early and grow it. Unfortunately, some of the older folks in our community are just as maybe not quite as educated on that kind of topic. But we need to start in the schools, and we need to build it from there. That's very.
I was a founding member of Interior Health's very first anti-racism community of practice, and working with issues related to oppression and health equity are super important to me. We know that members of marginalized communities, especially and including people who identify as 2S LGBTQIA+, have higher rates of mental illness and sadly higher suicide rates and more homelessness. So when we talk about health equity and bringing up the equity of marginalized groups who have a harder time, we need to balance power. And so we need to make sure that people who are on the lower end of the scale, who have worse health equity, worse health outcomes, higher suicide rates, etc., that we're doing more to support them. So when people are in the privileged position of having a home to live in, maybe identifying with the majority of being heterosexual or white or middle class, it's important that we understand how that privilege works and that we educate ourselves about improving health equity so that everybody can have the same opportunities. Nobody is more or less deserving. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, who you love. One of the things we say on our BC Greens Party website is that when it comes to the 2S LGBTQ+ community, our official policy is love, and it's the only one that makes sense. Continued work in this area with government funding, promoting anti-racism initiatives, inclusion initiatives, funding things like the Fernie Pride, well, the Elk Valley Pride Festival, pardon me, super fun, highly recommend. These sort of things need government involvement and funding so that we can help balance that equity issue and ensure that all British Columbians can live safely and healthy. Thank you.
Well, everyone just needs to live together. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you worship. It doesn't matter what color you are. We all just need to exist together. We need to respect each other. I am definitely anti-racism, anti-discrimination, anti-bullying. People just need to live. We need to live together. That's the nice thing about Canada, is that we're a lot of different people all living under one place. And we all have different beliefs, and we all have different religions. We have different traditions. We believe that we need to teach our kids things, and I think that's the freedom of the Conservative Party too. Is it's less government control and more freedom. You need to have freedom to be able to teach your kids what you believe is true and right. That's what I do with my kids too. It's whatever is true, whatever is just. That's what I teach my kids, to make sure that they know that those things are what others as well. LGBTQ people are people just like all of us, and they have the freedom to do what they like, and they have the freedom to be who they are, and there's no reason why anybody should tell them any different. Thanks.
I think it's important to promote support for the groups. The BCNDP is outwardly supportive of all groups, regardless of orientation. And I think that matters. It's written, it's out in the world, and we show it and we support it regardless. Inclusivity matters. You want to see your voice heard. You want to be able to be included and feel free to be who you are. And you shouldn't be scared to feel that. That should never be something that should be felt by anyone, let alone based on orientation. It's one of these hard topics where I generally like to take the high road on things, but it's also hard to sit here and hear the things that are being said by our candidates. The Conservative Party has nothing in the way of support for this community. It may be great that we're hearing it, but when you see it from the perspective of the individuals who are in these communities and the lack of feeling of support and the fear that they feel when they see what's blasted and put on the Conservative platform, if they had a platform, they shouldn't feel scared. We want that support to exist regardless, in schools, outside of schools, in our communities, and it should exist everywhere. Nobody should feel discriminated against in any way, shape, or form, regardless of being it racism or orientation. And it's something that I felt. It's also one of those things where the respect exists, but at the same time, my grandpa taught me, you practice what you preach and you say what you say, but you also show what you say. And I can remember there was 3 candidates, MLA members, who didn't stand up for SOGI rights in the legislature. And our current MLA is one of them who did not stand up for SOGI rights and acceptance. So thank you.
Rebuttals from anybody. So we're just a couple of minutes ahead of schedule, but not enough time to ask another question. So we're going to conclude the questions for this evening. And now we're going to ask our candidates to give their closing remarks. And we'll be starting with Tom Shypitka. I'm working on that one. There you go, Tom.
I've been called a lot worse. First, I just want to thank the Fernie Chamber of Commerce and the volunteers that put this forum on tonight. I also want to thank you for all being engaged in our democratic process in selecting the next MLA. Finally, I want to thank the candidates for their meaningful answers. I think it is important that any leader listen constructively to all sides. That is why an independent voice is so critical in this election. The number one requirement for any MLA is to look after the region they represent, sometimes totally different than the work done in Victoria. You can rest assured that my experiences and relationships that I've built up over the years will continue to keep the people in this riding always front and center. None of us know how the provincial election will turn out. We can only control who we elect here. With that in mind, there's only 3 possible scenarios. The first 2 scenarios are that we either have a majority NDP or a majority BC Conservative Party. Either way, the majority government is sealed, and you will need a hardworking MLA that has the experience necessary to look out for what is best for the riding. The third scenario, and most likely scenario, is that there will be no majority government. That would mean that the 4 or 5 independents that are likely to win in their ridings will hold the balance of power, along with possibly a green or 2. This is critical to understand. Being essentially the tiebreaker to who will govern our province has huge leveraging potential. We could use that leverage to increase our tourism destination management development. We could demand a wildlife and habitat management pilot project for the Elk Valley, funding for fire infrastructure and public assets such as the community center and fire hall, which both require very costly investments. Perhaps a push for expedited permitting for responsible mining projects to produce better financial and environmental outcomes for the Elk Valley. There are many asks that would benefit our region. Electing an experienced MLA with a proven track record will protect our region's interests, no matter what the outcome on October 19th. There is no downside for voting for an independent, only flexibility and opportunity. Being elected an independent, you're keeping the door open for an MLA who can hold the balance of power in the province. If we're not working together, we're working divided. I know none of us want that. I sense a desire for unity here in the Elk Valley, and I believe that's what we should be aiming for. In this election, it's not about voting green, orange, or blue. It's about standing together for the Kootenays. Collaboration and finding the best solutions for our community is how we'll accomplish great things. Trust is earned, And over the years, I believe my team and I have earned yours. Put that trust back in my hands, and I'll continue to deliver for you. This is our moment. Let's seize it together.
Thank you to the Fernie Chamber, Park Place Lodge, Free Press, my fellow candidates, and everyone who came out tonight. It's one of those things where I've had a great time tonight. I loved answering questions and engaging. We're at a point where nurses are worried. You know, we saw hospital closure before under Conservative government. Teachers are worried. We saw schools close under the Conservative government before with the BC Liberals. 237. We saw the Fernie Hospital get reduced. We saw Sparwood, Fernie, Kimberley, all closed. And nurses are concerned, and they should be. It's one of those things, we hired 6,300 new nurses, the most in Canada. We have 800 new doctors. We're opening schools, Montaigne here included in Fernie, and that's a K-7 school. We've approved more of that. We're building 4 times as many houses as Ontario. We have existing hospital expansion we're looking at as well, and affordable housing solutions for everyone, not just some. Looking at MSP reductions, we've done that as well. And we've seen that whatever we have for healthcare, yes, it needs a lot of work, and we admit that, but we're working hard in addressing those issues, and we're making actual strides to facilitate that. These debates are a great chance for people to come and hear what we all have to offer and help you make an important decision for BC's future. And I think tonight's forum has shown that there's a clear choice on who should represent our region. We're building a BC where you can afford a good home, whether you rent or you own, and where you can get healthcare when and where you need it. People out here work hard, and they need a hardworking representative. My family taught me that hard work and doing the right thing is something that you can always take away with you. I know the hardworking folks here in the Elk Valley and Fernie are looking for a stronger MLA, and I understand the needs of our region. Like I said before, I touch every single spot here that we have. And that's the kind of experience no other candidate here can provide. It may be one of the things where I'm just a dirty old coal miner who's throwing a jacket, but I come into this position as someone who listens, has compassion, and a willingness to ask questions, and I want a better future for our kids. When you need to talk with your MLA, it's generally a time of needing support, and you want someone who's willing to listen without judgment and has empathy. And I'm hoping that's what I can provide for you every single day. Thank you so much.
It's crucial that we come together in this election. Allowing the NDP candidate to win because of a vote split would set back our community significantly. We all desire change, and we can't miss this important opportunity. Our riding faces many pressing issues that require immediate attention. We need an MLA in majority government that can implement the changes we need now. Changes like making life more affordable, fixing our healthcare system, and attracting more doctors and nurses are the forefront of what I've been hearing from people in Kootenay-Rockies. Elkford desperately needs its ER back. And our small business owners are struggling under the weight of the NDP taxes and regulations. We must support our seniors and invest in infrastructure and housing. It's time to shift away from misguided policies surrounding safe supply and decriminalization. Public safety is also vital. We need to give our police officers back the ability to enforce the law and do their job effectively to keep the streets safe. Reviving our natural resource sector is key for our families' futures, along with effective wildlife and agriculture management. Building new schools and investing in our hospitals are also urgent needs. Highway safety is an issue here in Fernie, and we need to look at that as well. I know many of you can add a lot to this list, and it's clear that we have a lot to do. So what's the common sense choice? Supporting a candidate from a party ready to form a majority government is our best option. Let's be honest, an independent candidate simply won't have the resources to make the change that we so desperately need now. We cannot afford another 4 years of this current government or another 4 years of inaction. We need change, and we need it now. And if we don't start making change, our children and grandchildren will bear the consequences of our choices. This is a very important election, and the clear choice for Kootenay-Rockies is Pete Davis and the Conservative Party of BC. Together we can vote for a strong majority government that prioritizes real change, which is exactly what we need, and we need it now. Friends, the power is in your hands. Let's stand together and make the right choice for our communities, for our riding and our province. It's time for change. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for coming, and thank you so much for caring. Democracy is in your hands. I know we don't have like the best democratic system going, but it could be better. And the BC Greens have a major platform about improving our democracy. I can't say that for any of the other parties or candidates. Democracy is the key to this whole thing. Part of this is the discussion about majority or minority governments. It seems like people only like majority governments when their party is in the majority. And this is a major issue. If you're changing sides based on, you know, your team, it's not actually about good governance, or it's not actually about getting the job done. It's about partisanship and power struggles and choosing to fight and engage in the same game. I offer you that we do not have the time as a society, with the multiple crises we are facing, to continue voting for the same kind of back and forth, finger pointing, blaming, ineffective governments that we've been getting for years and years. If people want a serious change, if you actually say you want to change because the situation is serious, if you're looking at things like the hurricane barreling towards Florida, actually I think it's already touched already, you know, if you think that the housing crisis is not bad enough yet, then you can vote for the same kind of system with the same kind of parties that do government the same way. If you've been looking for the last decades and saying, I like this slow, ineffective back and forth, feel free to vote for those governments. Many of you don't realize the BC Greens are a legitimate party that have a platform well beyond environment and sustainability. The other parties cannot say that they have a balanced, fiscally responsible, fully costed platform that aims to balance the budget and meet the pressing needs of British Columbians. Please take a look. I advise you also take a look at my Facebook page, my website. I am a highly qualified, knowledgeable, local candidate ready to do the job with lots of energy, lots of optimism, and lots of availability to listen to you and hear your issues and help advocate for you in the provincial government. I ran in 2020. I know some of you supported me in that election, and I appreciate that. I got a slow start this time because since the last election, between 2020 and now this year, I dealt personally and closely with 4 deaths in my family. I want you to know how much I care about looking after people, how much I care about looking after my community, and how much I care about the people of Kootenay-Rockies. I am ready to serve you if you're ready to take this seriously and do things different. Thank you.
So that concludes our questions tonight. I just want to take the opportunity to thank you, the audience, for taking time out of your busy lives to come and join us tonight. Thank you so much. You've been very polite. It's probably the politest I've seen in a lot of these forums that we've done. The Park Place Lodge for this beautiful venue and for helping us set up. The Fernie Chamber of Commerce and their incredible staff that have been here with me since early this morning, setting things up, and Wendy and Renee and Jess, thank you all very much. The Fernie Free Press for their sponsorship in kind and advertising of this forum. Remember, folks, General Voting Day, October 19th, 2024, make your voice heard. If you need more information on voting, please visit elections.bc.ca. Plenty of information there. And we hope that this forum has provided you, the voting public, with the opportunity to learn more about the candidates so that you can make an informed decision when you do vote. Thank you. Have a good evening. And now join me in a round of applause for the 4 candidates.
Wait, let's try and get it again.